Hey guys, how's it going? It's Paul Myers, owner and lead therapist at Intentional Counseling. We are a group counseling practice in Frisco, Texas, and we are specializing in mental health. And so today I'm going to talk about boundaries. Boundaries is a common topic in the counseling world. Most people have heard of it. Most people have heard that term. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of what boundaries are, examples of boundaries, levels of intensity of boundaries, consequences of those intensities, and some examples so you can kind of understand the concept, right? So when we're talking about boundaries, ultimately it's like an invisible line that people have around them of what they're comfortable and not comfortable with. So someone who has really strong boundaries, there's going to be a lot of things that they're not comfortable with. That it's easier to cross over those boundaries because they have more of them, right? Versus people who have less boundaries or no boundaries, they're really never going to be upset, and they're much more easygoing about things, and they're also easy to take advantage of as well if you're not careful. And so I have a spectrum here to explain the levels of intensity of boundaries. So if you look, we have a continuum. Everything in psychology is a continuum. Nothing is black and white. There's a spectrum, okay? So on this spectrum I've drawn, we have from 0%, little to no boundaries, to 100% boundaries, very powerful extreme boundaries, okay? And you can really fall anywhere along the spectrum. Everybody falls somewhere, right? So let's start over here on this this weak boundaries over closer to the 0%. So this section here is what we would call passive. So the boundaries are weak, they're poor, they're loose, or non-existent. They're not very strong boundaries. There's not a lot of them. And so that would be a more passive individual. You will find that passivity really starts manifesting in their behavior, their way of thinking, and in the way they live their lives and interact with others. We'll cover some examples shortly. Over here on the other side, so on this continuum here, we have polar opposites, so polar extremes on either side. So on this side of the continuum, we have aggressive boundaries. Boundaries are very strong. And these boundaries, usually the more powerful they are, the more overbearing they are. They're, I would say, too strong. It can be very destructive in some ways if you're not careful. When we get to a very high degree, that's unnecessary. Okay, and so these people, they have more boundaries, and they are even more easily offended. They usually have they get frustrated more. They're more vocal, more expressive, and more likely to enforce the boundary if you violate their boundaries. Okay, and so then in the middle we have a balance between the two. So there's assertive. Assertive is kind of the healthy medium between those two extremities. And so assertive boundaries, I like to call it the double R's. They're respect and reciprocity of assertiveness is very healthy. So with assertiveness, we're trying to be respectful, but we're also asking for respect, right? And we have that reciprocity, so it's both ways, right? Assertiveness, we're direct, it's good communication, we're just being authentic and sincere. And we're not being overbearing or disrespectful or hurtful with aggressive boundaries that are too strong. And we're also not just, letting things slide and blowing things off and sweeping things under the rug or just ignoring it and avoiding and being passive either, right? So it's like a healthy balance, okay? So assertive is usually the goal. That's what we want to strive for most of the time. There are certain occasions where this fluctuates. It's just to what degree of assertiveness, maybe more mild or more extreme. It can kind of fluctuate depending on the circumstance and the example that we're using, right? So let's talk about some consequences of these boundaries. So there's a concept where we are using boundaries to teach people how to treat us. And so with every action, inaction, decision, everything that we say, everything we do, we are either exerting boundaries or not, and we're teaching others how to treat us. And so just be mindful of that, based on how I respond to a circumstance or an event, what am I teaching others about me, and how am I teaching others what's appropriate with me and how to treat me, right? So that's a healthy concept when we're talking about boundaries, is how do I teach people how to treat me? So passive people teach people that whatever they're doing is acceptable, that it's okay. No matter what it is. Passive individuals are always showing and teaching others that it really doesn't matter. And hey, don't sweat it, don't worry about it, it's okay. And sometimes that's great because you have grace, you have forgiveness, and that's healthy in some ways when people they make honest mistakes. But then it can be really detrimental for people that want to exploit or want to take advantage of you. And passive boundaries really encourage people to take advantage of you, and you become an easy target to get taken advantage of as well. And we're also teaching people that really anything goes, and it's really a free-for-all, right? So it kind of puts you in positions you don't want to be in if you have that passive boundary. Aggressive boundaries. So aggressive boundaries have different consequences. So that's usually more destructive on other people than it is on the individual. So passive boundaries is destructive for the individual who's passive, usually. Versus the aggressive boundaries is more destructive rather than being on the individual, it's more destructive on others, and then indirectly it becomes consequentially destructive on that person as well, right? So the aggressive boundaries, we're being destructive on others, we are enforcing boundaries to an excessive degree, where it's hurtful, it's detrimental, it's disrespectful, and it's overbearing. So it really damages relationships, it can damage your reputation, and have very severe consequences if you're not careful. The more aggressive, usually the more severe those consequences there. The consequences of assertive boundaries. So obviously aggressive boundaries teach people that really they need to be afraid of you, and that you're not safe, and that they need to be very careful around you and kind of tiptoe, right? Versus assertive teaches people to just respect you and to have a healthy respect for you. And it also teaches people that you respect them as well, which is very, very good on both sides. So the consequences of assertiveness are you get respect, but you also make others feel respected as well. So it's really a win-win. Versus the consequences of these extremities are usually more one-sided. So let's talk about some examples of some circumstances that come up and how we can handle it based on what type of boundary we have. So let's say I have a dinner planned with a friend of mine, and we're gonna grab dinner, and we planned it in 3 weeks in advance, and we're gonna go have dinner together at 7 p.m. on a Friday night, okay? Well, let's say 7 p.m. rolls around, and I show up to the restaurant, and I get us our booth, and I'm there, I'm ready to hang out, and I just don't hear from him. And so, I may wait 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe he's in traffic or something, you never know. There's life throws circumstances at you. And so I'll shoot him a text message, and I don't hear from him. So then an hour goes by, and I call and text, and I don't hear from him, and there's no communication. And so, we just eat the dinner, go ahead, get the check, and leave and go home, right? And so the next morning, let's say your friend calls you, and oh, hey, sorry, sorry about last night, I fell asleep. And so, okay, sure. So there's a couple ways of how you can handle that. So the passive individual teaches their friend that, hey, no, man, don't sweat it, whatever, sure, that's no big deal. They just kind of blow it off like, okay, that's fine, cool, we're just glad you're alive. The aggressive person is going to respond maybe in a critical way, maybe in a hurtful way, maybe criticize them as a friend, or cut them down, or make them feel guilty, or make them feel bad, or you owe me a dinner on a Friday night, or you wasted my time. And they're going to be really hurtful and destructive to the relationship as a result. Versus the assertive person may just say, hey man, I really value our relationship, I respect you, I respect your time, and it's an honest mistake, but try to respect my time as well, and maybe communicate a little bit better with me. If you're tired, just let me know, no big deal, we can reschedule, that's okay, right? And so that would be like an assertive approach, where we're teaching them to respect me, but I'm also being respectful as well. Okay, so there's that. So another analogy I can give you that really explains this and describes it is everybody has a box around them. So passive people have a small box around them. So if I'm a passive individual, we're gonna have a small box. Assertive people have a medium-sized box, and aggressive people have a large-sized box, okay? So the example I can give you is, if you take all these boxes and you throw it in a moving van and they go on a windy road, what's going to happen, right? Well, the big box smashes the small boxes, maybe damages the medium-sized boxes. The medium box doesn't really do any damage to anybody, but they hold their own. And then the small boxes just get crushed and really smashed to pieces, right? And that's kind of a good example of boundaries, how people would interact on a general basis. So, okay, hopefully that's helpful for you. If you struggle with passivity, I would encourage you to work towards the middle. If you struggle with aggressiveness, I would encourage you to work towards the middle. That's my challenge to you guys. If you resonate with this or you relate, feel free to leave your comments below. We want to help as many people as we can to get everyone engaged and a part of the conversation, and maybe you could help someone else with your story and your example. If you don't have a therapist, we'd be happy to help you. Feel free to go to Intentional Counseling website to pick a therapist for yourself. And until next time, thanks for coming by. Take care.